The collusion conspiracy is debunked. Will there be an investigation into why all this nonsense started in the first place? Plus, will the 2020 Democrat hopefuls ever get their act together? Let's talk about all of this with former campaign manager of the Trump 2016 team. Remember that one? Corey Lewandowski. Good evening, Corey.
Great to be with you tonight, Judge.
All right. Now, listen, Corey, you know, we've got these Democrats who are so focused on the president and the Mueller report that they just don't want to give up. And they're going to continue to go after the president, whether it's Jerry Nadler or Adam Schiff. Does this work to their detriment?
It absolutely is going to work to their detriment. And the reason being is they're going to continue to overreach. They're going to continue to press for impeachment. They're going to continue to remind the American people that they are a party that has no ideas. And all this president does is deliver every time. Promises made, promises kept. Look at the economy. Look what he's done for African-American unemployment, for Hispanic unemployment, the lowest numbers ever recorded. Look, I was with the president in Grand Rapids, Michigan on Thursday night. The reception there was the biggest I've seen. 15,000 in the arena, another 10 or 12,000 outside. If that's what the Democrats have to fight against, they have no chance.
Well, there's no question. I mean, you and I, obviously you, but I've been to several of these events, and the energy is incredible between the president and the audience. I've never seen anything like it. And I think that, you know, in addition to the backfiring of any additional hearings they might have, which can't possibly prove anything more than this long-winded Mueller investigation, I think the fact that they made it all up and that they were so confident, along with the mainstream media, the news cable, all of them, I think that the American public at some point is going to say, you know, we can't believe in them anymore.
You're exactly right, Judge. The biggest losers, in addition to the Democrats, have been the mainstream media, the other networks who perpetrated the story that Trump was going to be taken out in handcuffs, that they said every day he was never going to finish, you know, his first term, that Mike Pence was going to have to serve. Look, they have no credibility. It reminds me of the day after the election when Donald Trump dominated over Hillary Clinton. The long faces on the media on May 9th of 2016, of November 9th of 2016, was exactly the equivalent of after the Mueller report came out and Attorney General Barr gave his summary of what was in that. No collusion. No coordination, no obstruction. Very, very clear. The Democrats can't get over it. And the mainstream media cannot understand how wrong they were. And now they're all of a sudden, they're not investigators. Of course they are. They're supposed to be journalists, and they did a disservice to the American people. They can't be trusted.
Well, and I think the American people are going to remember that. But I want to now talk about the 2020 candidates. You know, specifically, I want to talk about one candidate, this guy, Peter Buttigieg, I think. I mean, he's not at the top of the polls, but let's take a listen to what he said last night on Bill Maher.
The paradox here is in order to beat Trump, we got to run a campaign that's not all about Trump. You know, the more it's about him, I think folks at home are going to be saying, okay, who's talking about me?
You know, I don't usually agree after I run a soundbite from Bill Maher, but I got to tell you, why don't some of the front-running Democrats do what this guy is talking about? Because he's right. Whether you've got Warren, Booker, Harris, you know, the whole like of them, all of them, every guy talks about Trump. And then even Biden, who isn't in yet. It's all Trump bashing all day. And yet the American people, I think, have to see something positive going on in their lives. Does this benefit them?
You're exactly right, Judge. And remember, this guy, Pete Buttigieg, he's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, a town of about 100,000 people. And all of a sudden, he's starting to resonate, starting to get these crowds because he actually is talking about things other than Donald Trump.
Right.
And what we know is you can't just have a campaign against somebody else. That's what Elizabeth Warren is going to do. Beto O'Rourke, whose real name is Robert Francis O'Rourke, right? All they want to do is bash this president. But what they don't want to do is talk about his record of success because he's delivered for the American people. The promises he's made is what he's kept. And if you look at every metric, people are better off today than they were 3 years ago when he took office. The stock market is on fire again. Our economy is growing. People are back to work. We've got a strong military. He's going to secure our border. So if you want to beat Donald Trump, come out with a plan that is better than what Donald Trump has done the last 3 years. I don't see it, but Pete's message is probably the right one for the Democrats. Stop attacking Donald Trump and go find something positive you could actually do for the country.
And you know, Corey, in the end, I don't know that any of them have the energy that Donald Trump has or can take the blows and the incoming that he has. So I think that on that level, there is no comparison. Corey Lewandowski, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Judge.
Former Democratic Maryland Congressman John Delaney, who joins us right now. Congressman, very good to have you.
Nice to be here, Neil.
The crisis at the border. Jay Johnson says, at least on this, the president's right. What do you think?
Well, I mean, there seems to be an uptick in the number of people trying to cross the border at this moment in time. So, you know, obviously we need to deal with that. We need to deal with what's going on in Central America. If we ever want to actually have a secure border, we have to focus on how destabilized Central America is. We have to focus on the southern Mexican border, which is a border that's actually much easier to control. And then, as I've said all along, we have to do smart things to secure our border.
So when the president talks about a wall and this crisis / emergency justifies it, you say what?
See, this is how I would do it, Neil. You know, I would take a very different approach. Border security is kind of a complicated thing, meaning in some places you use technology, in some places we need more people, and in some places we need barriers. So what I would do if I were president, I would negotiate a certain amount of money with the Congress, $2, $3, $4 billion, whatever that number is, and I would get experts in the room, and I would have those experts recommend the best way to secure a very large border that has lots of different terrain and, you know, lots of different situations. And I think what those experts would say is, you know, invest a couple billion in technology here and here and here. They would say put more people or more personnel in certain places. And they would probably recommend building physical barriers in certain places. And I would follow those recommendations, because what I would want to do as president is do the best thing for the United States of America and use our money as wisely as possible. And that's not what's going on right now, right? Because we have a political debate about a real situation at the border instead of actually focusing on what the problem is, how do we best solve it as Democrats, Republicans, independents, Americans, whatever the case may be, and what resources do we put against the problem?
Do you think some of those who are challenging you on the run for the Democratic nomination are too stubborn to acknowledge the obvious, that there is a crisis there, whether it's an outright emergency to warrant what the president is doing? I guess that's open to debate. But by ignoring it outright, they're only, you know, hurting themselves. What do you think?
I mean, look, numbers don't lie. And I think the secretary just said that we are going to see 100,000 people potentially be arrested at our border this month, which is higher than it's been in a while. So again, numbers don't lie. So that means border crossings are up, arrests are up, and we need to deal with it. But, you know, that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of aspects to this problem. As I said, you know, I really think the situation in Central America, I mean, I was down at the border 2 months ago. My wife and I went down there with 14 law students that we took down for a week with a couple of law professors to help asylum seekers in Dilley, Texas, which is, you know, near San Antonio. There were 1,700 women and children in this facility. And if you listen to the stories that these women would tell you about what happened to them and their families in Central America, I bet every single one of your viewers would leave as well. So to me, it underscored the need to actually concentrate on what the real problem is, which is what's going on in those countries, work with Mexico to secure their southern border, which is a much easier border to secure because it's smaller.
Right.
And then obviously invest real money in our border, right? So I do support more investments in border security on our border. I just want them to be the right ones, and I want them to be smart ones.
Congress, I might be remiss if I didn't bring up this latest Joe Biden controversy concerning Lucy Flores, a former Democratic candidate for Nevada Lieutenant Governor, who claims, and this is just out now, and the Biden camp is responding to it, that he made her uncomfortably touched her. And the Biden camp has come out to say they didn't know it at the time. They feel bad about it. But others have said, whether it's coming from the Me Too movement or what have you, that he shouldn't announce, that he shouldn't enter the race, that this makes him persona non grata with them. What do you think?
You know, Neil, to be honest with you, I haven't followed this story, and I'm not just saying that to avoid it. Yesterday, I got up, at 6 in the morning to visit an opioid treatment center in New Hampshire. I had about, 10 events all day in New Hampshire, and I got on a plane and flew to Iowa last night, and I'm up this morning and I'm rolling out my Heartland Fair Deal, which deals with rural America and how we increase investments in rural America, because rural America has been drained of a lot of talent and a lot of investment capital. And I saw the headline, so I'm not saying I hadn't heard about it, but I literally didn't read one word about it. I mean, my response to these things is always, I have no reason to doubt the person who is saying it. But literally, I haven't even read a story about it, and I'm not trying to avoid it.
No, I understand, and I didn't really want to hit you blindside with it, but if it turns out that this woman's accusations are accurate, there are those in your party who say that Joe Biden should think twice about running for president. Do you have any thoughts in that regard?
Well, I mean, again, I don't even know what the accusations are, but they're serious enough to get a lot of attention. So if they're accurate, of course he should think twice about it.
Okay. Let me ask you, you're also a very wealthy man, over the years, a very successful businessman. It's a moving target trying to figure out how much you're worth, in excess of $150 million, I think it's safe to say. I don't want to get too personal with you in that regard. But some of your colleagues say rich guys like you should pay a wealth tax, or at the very least higher taxes. What do you think of that?
I think I should pay higher taxes, but I don't think a wealth tax is the right way of going, right? It's very complicated. It's hard to figure out. It basically gives the government the ability to kind of take assets, which you never know where that can go. And it's not clear it's constitutional. So I think it's kind of a silly fight to some extent. I do think, however, high earners should pay higher taxes because we need more revenues to get our fiscal trajectory under control. And the way I would do it is actually pretty simple. I think there's a big loophole that exists right now between the capital gains rate and the ordinary income rate. We have a low capital gains rate because of an historical kind of anomaly when we had to encourage people to invest. You cover markets, Neil. You know markets really well. You know the markets are super liquid, and anyone with any resource is investing. And if they don't invest, it's because they're afraid, not because taxes are too high. So I would do things like the Buffett rule and do things to close the difference, because I don't think the investor class should pay half in a tax rate as the working class. I think that's just structurally unfair in our society. And I would focus on that,
you would hike the capital gains tax, right?
Yeah, or have a minimum. I would favor a low capital gains rates for certain types of behavior. Like I'm rolling out this plan for rural America. If you invest in distressed communities, I'm great with giving you a lower capital gains rate. But I think for, doing leveraged buyouts, those investors don't need a lower rate than you pay on your taxes, at Fox.
All right. John Delaney, very good catching up with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil.